Hi, everybody. It's Sonia McDonald here, and welcome to Leadership with Sonia, where I have the honour of chatting to remarkable humans and leaders around the globe. And today I get to talk to the incredible Alice Hanna. She is the head of people and culture at Kapitol Group. And they're also finalists in our Outstanding Leadership Awards. Alice and I were talking just before about courage and courageous leadership and how she is incredibly excited and passionate about courage and leadership. And that's why she was, thought, oh my gosh, there's a platform for us to showcase courage and leadership, which I think we need more than ever before. So welcome, Alice, to Leadership with Sonia. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. Really honoured to be invited. I love listening to your podcast, so really honoured to be a guest.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's an honour to have you. I would love to know, because I love people's stories. So tell me your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Gosh, it's a long one. So I studied psychology at uni. I actually, for the oldies out there, I wanted to be Scully from the X-Files. So I thought I'd study psychology and be a forensic psychologist because she's just amazing. So I did that, but throughout that degree, I realised it probably wasn't for me. So after that, I actually didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I'd done, 4 years at uni, had an honours degree in psychology, and then kind of thought, gosh, what now? And luckily for me, I landed in a HR admin role at an airline, and I just fell in love with human resources. I was able to use all the psychology skills to motivate, to drive, to understand, to create great cultures. And really it's gone from there. So I've focus more and more on culture, creating great culture, leadership development. I've always worked in male-dominated industries, aviation, mining, engineering, now construction. So I've worked in industries with big challenges around culture and around leadership, and I just keep falling in love every day with the concept of how do you motivate and inspire people? How do you keep them passionate and healthy and driven? And how do you create context in which they can be their best selves? So that's a little bit about my story. Started wanting to be Scully from the X-Files, and here I am working in culture and construction. So
Same. So, yeah. I can see, why you're needed in the construction. We do a lot of work in the construction engineering space. That's predominantly the industries we work in. I really love it. And funnily enough, I did put a post up last night that around 8:45, there was a knock at my door, and one of my clients in the construction space sent me this most beautiful bunch of flowers. I was a bit nervous at that time, and I was like, who is at my door? Because unfortunately that day or the day before, our neighbours' 2 cars got stolen. So I was like, we're all a little bit on edge in the complex. And I was like so humbled to receive these bunch of flowers they work in construction. And because I just love leadership so much. And I know you love leadership so much. And you were also HRD Leader of the Year, one of the HRD, is that right, for 2022?
Yeah, the Australian HR Manager of the Year, which was really humbling as well.
So you're really passionate about leadership. So I would love to know, what does leadership mean to you? Why is it important to you?
Well, I mean, we all know that we spend more of our waking lives at work than we do with our friends and families. And really, the leader you report to, but also the wider leadership of the company, have such a huge impact on that experience. So if you think about it in that context, a huge impact on your life is made by the leaders that create the culture you work in and that you report to directly. So as leaders, we have an incredible responsibility, I think, and we have such an impact on people's lives. I mean, I look back at leaders I've had, and I've had leaders that help me see my own abilities and believe in myself and build my self-worth and help me bust through ceilings that I didn't think were possible to bust through. But I've also worked in organisations and for leaders that did the opposite. And when you do have a leader that isn't a positive influence, it's not just a bad day at work, it's a huge influence on your life. So, when I was working for leaders that were impacting my self-worth, that flowed on to things like, it exacerbated anxiety in my life, and it really did impact my own belief in myself. So I've seen how it can go really well, and I've seen the impact it has if it doesn't. So I'm now so conscious of that, and that you actually have such an impact on people's lives, and that's a big responsibility. So I want to create environments where leaders understand that, and leaders are providing that environment to keep their people safe, happy, confident, motivated, passionate, and also organisations to create cultures where people can just be their best selves and give their best and enjoy coming to work, and that impacts their whole life. It really does.
It does impact their whole life, and music to my ears what you're saying, because it is about how to create that safe environment. So you being so focused on that is just wonderful to hear. How do you do that? I mean, you're head of people and culture. How do you create cultures of psychological safety, or those environments for people to thrive, which is so important in that role that you play, that leadership you play?
It's a huge question. I could sit here for days and talk about this one. Look, I think there really has to be strong values alignment. So you have to make sure that the values are real and not a poster on the wall. You have to make sure that the vision is motivating and inspiring to people, but then you have to actually live and breathe that. There's nothing worse than inauthenticity in an organisation. So here at Kapitol Group, one of the programs we have that's really unlocked psychological safety, it sounds so simple, but it's so difficult to do. We have a process where people share their mistakes, share their lessons learned, we call them, on a public forum. So the whole company sees you write, hey, I made a mistake today. Here's what happened. Here's what I've learned. Here's how you can avoid the mistake. And then other teams will jump on that system and say, wow, thank you. We're about to do that on our site next week. Let's check that we haven't made the same mistake. And it was incredibly difficult. It's been 3 years in the making. And at the start, nobody wanted to share their mistakes because, of course, people are used to being fired or shouted at or yelled at for mistakes. So it started really slowly, and then it gathered steam. And now probably we have maybe 15 or 20 a week where people are sharing things that have gone wrong. And some of them are big, like some of them are $1 million mistakes. Some of them are, small, but they all add up, right? But what it's done is it's had this huge flow-on effect to psychological safety, because making mistakes is one of the most terrifying aspects of going to work. We all know what it feels like when we've made a mistake. We get the sweaty palms and the heart rate increases, and you dread going to say to your manager, hey, I've made a mistake. We now reward that. We have a monthly prize, a monthly monetary prize for the best mistake that was made and shared. And we have people saying, oh, I made a mistake, the team made a mistake. I want to be the one to share it. I want to be, in for the monthly prize. People feel comfortable to make mistakes and know they'll be thanked for it, rewarded for it. And they know they're helping their peers not to make the same mistake. It's unlocked a lot of other aspects of psychological safety. So we now have an environment where people can open up about other aspects that they're uncomfortable about, whether that be culture or respect or behaviour or how the business is running. So our staff are not shy. They're more than happy to say to us, hey, this isn't going well at the moment. And give us feedback on other aspects of the environment. And we think it all started from that real psychological safety around making mistakes. And our own leaders do it. Our own directors will stand up and say, I made a mistake. And on every single mistake shared, the directors jump on and say, great share, thank you for sharing. So it's one program we run that's then had huge flow-on effects to other areas of psychological safety, which I love.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. I love the element of, I'm very big on values, huge around values. That values alignment is everything. So everybody listening and watching, make sure you think about your values and that you have to espouse them. But I love the mistakes. Like that's how we get our greatest lessons and learnings. I can tell you right now, I would win that prize so often. I make so many mistakes. I make so many mistakes. Then I look back and I go, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad I made those mistakes because it actually were my greatest lessons. What's been your biggest mistake? If you could think about a mistake that you've gone, wow, I learned a lot from that. Do you have any that come to mind?
Gosh, yeah, at a previous organisation about 10 years ago, we changed up the annual leave policy, and we had a period of the year where annual leave was quite restricted because it was our busiest time of year where 80% of our revenue came in. And I just didn't think it through. I just thought, yeah, we're updating the leave policy, update the policy, send it out, do some comms. And I just didn't think through, well, hang on a minute, this is people's leave and their lives, and they want to take holidays at certain time and they want autonomy over that. And I didn't consult enough. I didn't listen to people enough. I didn't think it through enough. I was just on autopilot mode and thought, yep, update the policy, off we go. And we got such huge, constructive feedback about it, and it really impacted people. So we had to very quickly kind of roll it back, consult, change the approach, communicate in a different way and better. And I just learned, it was probably 15 years ago now, I think, and I probably just learned such a huge lesson about when something has a huge impact on people personally, take it a lot more seriously than a policy or procedure change. Consult more, listen more, be more curious, ask more questions, put yourself in their shoes. So that was a huge lesson for me.
Wow, that's actually, and I'm sure it's made you an even greater leader, right? I mean, yeah, it's, and just don't beat yourself up about it. Anyone that's watching or listening, that we all do, we all make mistakes, and it's like, okay, what can I do about it? What's the solution? How do I turn this around? So for you, like when you think about leadership, what do you like? What do you stand for as a leader? What makes, in terms of your leadership, what do you want to, like, what do you, I always say to people, I always ask these people, who do you want to be as a leader? What do you want to stand for as a leader? Like, why do you want to lead? Big questions, but I mean, what's leadership to you?
As I said before, it's a huge responsibility. So for me, leadership's not getting the best out of my teams to meet the outcomes my business needs. Leadership is much more a responsibility. So once I'm a person's leader, I have their back for life, whether they leave the organisation or not. Yep. I'm still really well connected to people I've led in the past. I like to lead with empathy. I think that's one of the most important characteristics any human can have in this day and age. I think the world is lacking a lot of empathy. And so I try and bring that into leadership to really put myself in other people's shoes, to understand we're all in different boats, facing different challenges. We all have different capabilities to meet those challenges depending on who we are and what's going on for us. So I try to lead with empathy. I try to keep in mind that the more you invest in people, the better outcomes you get. So I think a lot of leaders default to, well, look, if we need to cut, if times are tough, we'll cut costs. My view's always been, actually, when times are tough, invest more in people, invest more in their development, invest more time and energy and care and support in them. So, the best leaders I've worked with, I kind of say they see the matrix. They understand that the more you invest in people, the better the business outcomes, where, again, a lot of leaders focus on the business to get business outcomes rather than focusing on the people to get business outcomes. So it's a people-first approach. I try and be empathetic. I try and be courageous as well, speaking of courage. So being in senior leadership roles for 15, 20 years now, I sit at executive tables. Sometimes I have to be the one to be the courageous person and say, the decisions we're making might be right for the bottom line, but they're not right for the people. And that's been honestly terrifying. When I was early to being in senior leadership roles, I didn't have the courage to say, everyone, stop, think about what we're doing here. We might increase the profit margin, but we're going to impact people and their lives and retention and engagement and quality of outcomes if people are whatever, unhappy or fatigued, whatever. So I've had to build that courage muscle to stand up and say, no, that's not right. And that's not how we want to role model to the business. So, I think empathy, a people-focused approach, and courage are probably what I try to bring to leadership every day.
Love, love, love. Love those aspects. I'm all about, obviously, courage and kindness. But also, I believe that empathy is the new leadership style. And it has to be about, it was interesting, we're pulling together a summit at the moment, and I'm talking to a number of people in the HR space, and there's a real now focus on how do we make it the human first. Like, we need to so much talk about AI and things like that. It still has to be about people. And I love the fact that you've focused on, okay, when we have challenges, like, and you saw it during COVID, right? It's organizations went to, how do we save money? How do we make sure the bottom line of the business? They forgot about the people, but the companies that focused on the people, particularly during the COVID, I was seeing really stood out, really shined, because it was like, we need to take care of our people. And I have to ask, and I love the fact you have this amazing voice around courage and speaking up, and you building that courage muscle. How did you do it? Like, so many people say to me, oh no, I can't speak up, or no, I'm too scared to speak up at a meeting, or like, and I go, no, you've got to use your voice. You've got to use a voice. You've got a voice for a reason. Like, use it, lean in. How did you build that muscle? Or did you just go out there and do it?
Look, I'm still building it, to be honest. It's one of those things that as soon as you stop doing the bicep curls, you get weak. As soon as you stop using the courage muscle, it goes pretty quick. So I am still working on it for sure. Look, going back to values, I did go through a process of defining my personal values, and one of my personal values is courage. And I define that as be scared and do it anyway. So I'm terrified of a lot of things. I'm terrified of being on this podcast because I might say something silly and people might judge me. I'm terrified of a lot of things, right? So I defined that as be scared and do it anyway. And that holds me to account. So I've got my values, stuck up on the wall at home, and I see them a few times a day, and they just remind me of what really matters to me. So because it's be scared and do it anyway, when I was in the moment of fear, I remembered that courage isn't not being scared. Courageous people aren't the ones that aren't scared. Courageous people are the ones who are scared and do it anyway. So I had to kind of practice that. Like, to bring in a personal story, my husband and I went to New Zealand, and I don't know if you've ever done the Never swing, but it's this ginormous swing that, kind of swings 300-meter arc across a canyon, and it's absolutely terrifying. And when I saw it, when we got up there and I saw people doing it, I just said, nope, I'm not doing it. You do it. I'm going to wait in the bus. There's absolutely no way. And bless him, he said, Alice Hanna, one of your values is courage, be scared and do it anyway. I was like, oh, damn. So I did, and it was terrifying, but I'm glad I did it. So that's doing little things like that, again, like the bicep curls. It just builds the muscle. It builds the courage muscle. So whenever I'm scared of something, I come back to my value, and I realize that for my own growth and my own success, I just have to work through the fear. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's just too much. And that's why I'm saying it's still a work in progress. I'm not the most courageous leader out there by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm someone who understands that courage is important, and I work on it daily. So there are times, as I said, where I don't speak up and I regret it later, and then I remember those times. So the next time I'm in a situation where I want to speak up and I'm starting to shy away from it, I bring that to mind and think, remember how much you regretted not speaking up last time. And sometimes you just have to take a breath and do it. And every time you do it and don't lose your job or get yelled at or whatever you're afraid of, that gives you a little more courage next time.
For those who are listening and can't see how I'm responding or reacting to Alice's story about New Zealand, I'm like, wow. Like, I was like, I could feel the fear. What was it like? Like, what was the swing? Even though you said it was scary, what was it like being on the swing? Like, what was it? I've always wondered what it's like. I thought you were going to say bungee jumping. I thought,
well, it starts like that. So you fall first. You fall straight down first, and instead of bouncing back up like a bungee, it then turns into this giant swing. So, oh my goodness, my heart races thinking about it. When I was sitting there waiting to be dropped, my heart was in my throat. I wanted, every fiber of my being was saying, get off, get off, get off, get off. You're going to die. Get off, get off, get off. As I fell, I just thought, that's it. That's the end. My stomach came back out through my mouth, and it was an awful 5 seconds. But then the swing was beautiful and calm, and you saw the gorgeous landscapes of New Zealand. For anyone that's been to Queenstown, you know it's the most breathtaking place you can go. And it was beautiful and freeing, and it was one of those moments of sea. You just had to get through the moment of terror to get the beautiful benefit of the freedom. And that was a great analogy for me in life. I use that example a lot. We run vision and values sessions here at Kapitol. I ran one yesterday, and I told that same story. And I use moments like that in my life to remind myself that the benefit on the other side of the fear is worth it. It's worth that moment. And I've never, the things I'm afraid of, the losing my job or the getting yelled at or the whatever, they've actually never happened.
Yeah. It's amazing what we can ruminate in our mind, or stories we can come up in our minds. It's that kind of like, oh, what happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? But what happens if you don't? It's like, and that's the fear that a lot of us have, is that we fear the unknown, or we fear all these different scenarios in our head, but the likelihood of it happening is so small. And it is about, I think, those times where you have to go, when I'm going to step into courage, if I don't do this, am I going to, down the track years to come, look back on that time and go, I wish I had, I wish I had jumped and sat in that swing, right? Or said something at the table, because life is too short. It is about, and we do need more courage. We do need more kindness and empathy in the world. And that's why role models like yourself are so important. And I'd love to talk about role models in terms of your life and your career. I mean, who's made a difference in your life? Who's someone or some people that have stood out to you that you've gone, their leadership actually impacted me? Do you have anyone that you can think of?
Yeah, there's a couple that jump to mind. I've had 2 managers that really have impacted me. One called Michelle, one called Andy. Hi, if you're listening. Michelle really made me believe in myself where I didn't. She gave me opportunities that, my chin dropped to the floor, and I thought, why on earth are you offering me this? I can't do this. And she would show me that she believed in me more than I did, which then helped me believe in myself. And I think that was really important. If she had given me an option, I would have said no. She didn't give me the option. She just said, we back you here, and this is what you're doing. And despite all my freaking out and anxiety, she was there every step of the way and really helped me grow. And I don't think I would have got to the level of seniority or taken some opportunities in my career that I have if it wasn't for her believing in me to show me I could believe in me. Gosh, I almost get teary talking about it.
Oh, it's making me teary. I'm thinking, what an amazing woman. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And then Andy. So Andy's an awesome human as well. And he also just really believes in people. And he gave me some really good feedback once that I still remember to this day. It was some constructive feedback that I needed to hear. And he just did it in the most beautiful, kind, gentle, authentic way that it didn't upset me. It just made me curious about me, and then made me observe, and then made me realize actually that is something that's potentially holding me back. And I don't think I would have really worked on that aspect of myself if it hadn't been given to me in that way. So he's awesome. He's still a friend to this day. So I think, Michelle and Andy stand out. And I have to give a call out to my cheer squad, my girls from school as well. So I am just so lucky that I had a group of driven, passionate, high achieving, high goals girls at school. And we have always been there for each other. 30 years later, we're still each other's biggest cheerleaders. We're on our WhatsApp group every day, congratulating each other for stuff. And they've all gone on to do absolutely magnificent things. And I think we've always just had each other's back, been each other's cheerleaders. Wow. And I just really encourage everybody to find that home base for themselves, to find the person or the people that will be your biggest cheerleader, even when you don't believe in yourself. So those girls have been with me for 30 years now, and hopefully for the next 30 years as well. So I've been really lucky to have those people in my life who have not only supported me but believed in me and helped me believe more in myself as well, which I now try and pass on to other people.
That ripple effect. I love that. And funnily enough, I have been really flagging women supporting women this week, like big time. The power of women supporting women. That's the only way we're going to break any of these barriers or the data around, getting more women to step in and step up and have the courage to lead and be at the table. Is the power of women supporting women is phenomenal. And it's so great to hear that you are kind of living and breathing that. And I would love to know as well, I know I've got a lot of questions that I want to ask you about leadership, is like, if you think about, I know you mentioned that, early on when you started out in your degree and in your career that you wanted to be Scully, if you could go back in time and give your younger self any other advice other than that, I don't know, like, even though it was great that you tried to be Scully and go down this direction, is there any other advice you would give your younger self about leadership, about life? What would you say?
Oh, gosh, so much. Firstly, that values piece again. Just be curious about who you are and sit with yourself, find out who you truly are. I think at that young age, we look externally to who we should be rather than looking internally. So I'd give myself the advice to get to know myself better, get to know what I really, truly value, what I'm really, truly passionate about, which leads on to the next point about follow your heart, follow your passion, never follow a should. A lot of us get a lot of shoulds from family or school or uni or society, and we think we should do a certain thing even then when our gut tells us that there's a passion elsewhere. So I would tell my younger self to follow my passions earlier. And a big one would be telling myself that people think about me a lot less than I think they do. I'm constantly or was constantly worried that people were judging. What would people think if I said this? What would they think? Or maybe if I said that instead, what would they think? Or if I made a mistake, I'd think, oh gosh, they hate me and they think I'm terrible at what I do. And I just thought way too much about what other people thought. And instead of, again, me coming back to who I am and whether I was happy with something I'd achieved or done, I was always looking at, well, what will other people think? So I think my life would have been far less, far less worried about what other people think if I had just let that go at an earlier age.
So true. So true. And this is where social media today, like in terms of everyone, like comparison, what are people thinking? This whole judgment piece. It's like, people are only putting their best lives on social media and people actually really aren't thinking that much about anyone. Like, we're kind of like, just be your authentic self and live your best life. It's great advice. Anyone listening, like, yes, do not worry about, and if they're not thinking about us, they're not thinking about you. So just the only thing that matters is how you see yourself and what you think about yourself. So I think that's really important. So how do you sharpen your sword? Like, how do you today be your best self? Like, how do you learn? How do you grow? What do you do to invest in you, Alice?
A lot of self-reflection. So almost daily I have a practice of, what did I do well today? What am I proud of today? What could I have done differently today? What can I learn from today? And that's not technical knowledge. You can always Google technical knowledge. That's how did I interact with people today? What impact did I have on people today? So I try and ask myself those questions regularly when I'm driving home or on the train home. Instead of, scrolling through social media, I try and ask myself those questions. Of course, it doesn't happen every day. Nobody's perfect, but probably at least 2-3 times a week, I spend that reflection time. I do reflect on my values a lot, and they constantly teach me. Because they are really coming back to that authenticity piece. They are who I am at my core and want to be. And if I don't hold myself accountable to those, what am I holding myself accountable to? So I learn every day from how I've interacted with people and what I could do differently and better. I also really believe in mentoring and coaching. So I'm in a pretty senior role, but I still have a mentor and I still have a coach, because I think it's so important to get that neutral, unbiased perspective from somebody who can hold a mirror up. A good coach will always hold a mirror up and let you truly see. They're not going to sit there and tell you what they see. That's not what a good coach does. So mentors are so important. That's another piece of advice I'd give young Alice, is find mentors early and use them. So yeah, I think most of my learning these days comes from self-reflection, introspection, and making that a practice. That can't be a once a year, once a quarter activity. That has to be ongoing and daily.
Wow, yes, I love that you do all that. It's we run different leadership programs around Australia, and some of them are 6 or 9 months, and people say, oh my gosh, there's so much to this space. And I'm like, there is a lot to leadership, right? And however, if you can take away a couple of things, stay true to your values and keep self-reflecting. If you keep doing that, they're the two keys. It's how was I today? Was my best self today? How can I be better tomorrow? Like that sort of self-reflection and is so powerful. And staying true to your values as well. And if anyone's listening or watching, there's heaps of different tools that you can. We've got them as well. If you want to reach out to us, we have got some values tools. But if you Google free values assessments or tools, there's heaps on Google as well. Get to know your values. I've got my 5 top values, and I always, and again, I'm not perfect, but it's just that compass, right? It helps you navigate, and it's really important. So yeah, and also coaching and mentoring. If you can all have a coach and a mentor, that's the greatest gift. So some amazing lessons. The perfect lessons are the actual ones that we teach. So it's great to hear that you're living and breathing that as well. So, gosh, thank you so much. There's so much more I'd love to talk to you about, but I've already taken up so much of your time. It was so wonderful talking to you, and I'd love to know, is there anything else you'd love to say to all these people out there listening and watching about leadership, or any other guidance or advice or insights you'd like to leave us with today?
Look, I think we started by talking about kindness and courage, and I think we all need to be kinder to ourselves to enable us to be kinder to others. I think we're all our own harshest critic, and we probably don't care for ourselves enough, and I think you have to start with you. So please, everybody, we live in a tough world. Be kind to yourself, be kind to other people, and I think the world would change if everybody did those two things.
That should be a T-shirt. That needs to be a T-shirt. But it is. I mean, it's. I do have a T-shirt saying "kindness is my superpower," but I think it is. If you're kind to yourself, you're kinder to others as well. And I'm not perfect at this, beating myself up. It's just, we're only human. Like, we need to embrace and love ourselves and be kind to ourselves. So yeah, that's great. Great advice. So thank you so much, Alice, for today. I'm sure everyone loved listening to you. I certainly have loved talking with you about leadership today and hearing all your insights, which are just amazing. So I just want to say a massive thank you for being on our podcast and live today. It was such an honor speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia.
All right, you take care and stay kind and courageous.